Okay, ciao ragazzi. Hey guys, Tony Baroda here. I normally don't do like vlogging things or talk about like things that I've done outside from content creation or podcasting, but I must say, I just got back from Italy with the family and I had to talk about it. Okay, so not only did I go with my wife and my 1-year-old kid, but I encourage anybody that has maybe thought about going to Italy. Hopefully this quick video will give you kind of some pros and cons of things to do and what not to do, as well as just like experience it, because it is a different world. Like you always hear about, oh, Italy, the food, and Italy, the sights, and you're like, how good could it be? Just go. Fucking go, because it is that good. All right, let's get into it. So let me tell you, this trip was filled with a lot of wow moments, and most of the time it felt like we were living out of a postcard. But there was also some moments that made me question some life choices. So before we get into it, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. And if you want to hear more about this stuff, leave it in the comments below, because I plan on doing a whole series about things we did when we were in Italy, kind of like our itinerary, and just sharing a little bit more about the experience. And who knows, we plan to go back pretty soon, so I might do more videos like this in the future. All right, so here's kind of the quick version. So we landed in Rome, and the airport, if you haven't been to Rome, they've done a lot of renovations, but super smooth. People are really friendly, to the point to where we were kind of wondering whether or not, okay, is this just because we're tourists, or is this just how people are? And you'll realize later in the video, this is just how people are. I mean, especially because we had a kid, we got bumped to every single line, including going through customs and landing in Italy. It's just truly amazing the type of like service that you get. Almost like people are not stressed and they're not irritated or upset. It's a lot of ciao, buongiorno, like everyone was just super polite and friendly. And I tried not to act like a tourist, even though I did have a fanny pack, but that's just because that's good practice. So I failed miserably at that aspect. But overall, it was just a really great experience. Even when we hopped in the cab driver was just super sweet. It was about a 20-minute ride to the hotel. We went a little bit north of Rome, about 20 minutes north of the Colosseum, and that way we were kind of out of the tourist area. So the cab driver barely spoke English. So he had like kind of some soft Italian opera in the background playing the music. So I don't know if this is just Europe, but something about Italian cars, there's no law when it comes to car seats, which is crazy. Like you don't physically have to have a car seat. So our kid was just kind of like hanging out. I mean, we were hanging on for dear life, of course, but yeah, that was kind of terrifying. So note to self. All right, now let's get into the sights. Let me tell you something. You could walk in 2 feet either direction and boom, you're face to face with some ancient, mind-blowing piece of history or church or just an amazing building that you're like, how did they make this? Absolutely beautiful. Like even if you don't know what you're doing or where you're going, you can get lost and just be amazed by the buildings that you're walking by. Now, of course, we had to hit the big ones, right? Because we're in Rome. So we did the Colosseum, the Roman Forum, and Vatican City. Now, those were the only 3 major hitters that we did. Mainly because I felt like I was in history class when we were doing this, except I wasn't asleep. It was kind of cool to get that history rehashed to me. That the last time I heard about it was 20 years ago. So that was really fun. But, the reason we only did those 3 tours, I mean, we were there for 2 weeks. The only reason we did those 3 things was, we had a kid. She just turned 1. So we kind of knew it was going to be unpredictable. And a lot of those big things like the Colosseum and the Roman Forum, you can actually book in advance, which I highly recommend. There's a lot of apps you can use. I might leave them down below because I can't remember off the top of my head, but you can book in advance and you can actually do private tours and guided tours or self-guided, which are cheaper. But I definitely recommend guided tours, especially if you want like the authentic experience and you want the history lesson. It's definitely worth a few extra euros for sure. Because let me tell you, I mean, first of all, the Colosseum, right? Let's talk about the heavy hitter. Insane. I mean, do you think like when you see the Gladiator, you think you know everything about the Colosseum? It is crazy, and it's a very immersive experience that they do for you, especially with the guided tours. Walk through like the gladiator pit where you can actually see where the gladiators were held, and they give you the history of like they filled it up with water and had these water battles and like all this stuff that maybe you knew but forgot about. But when you see it in action and how like intricate everything was, it's fascinating. And even our 1-year-old daughter was like super impressed. I mean, granted, she was probably staring at the birds that were flying around. She wasn't really looking at the 2,000-year-old structure, but I mean, either way, it was absolutely unbelievable. Now, Vatican City. Now, I'm not religious by any means. In fact, I probably had to dose myself with holy water when I walked in there. Look, Vatican City is amazing. There's so many incredible sculptures, and the history that's behind Vatican City, and then of course the Sistine Chapel, and all that is next level, of course, right? Having said that, the guided tour that we did, and if anybody else had a guided tour of the Vatican City, let me know in the comments if this is true, but I just was not impressed. We spent a lot of time getting shown pictures and hearing from the guided tour, or the tour guide rather, about the history and everything that's involved, and all the saints and the churches and all that stuff, and that's all great and everything. But listen, man, we had a kid. She needs a snack and a nap. You know what I mean? So we were hoping this 3-hour guided tour would be like mostly the Sistine Chapel and mostly a lot of structures and all. But most of the time we were like just getting shown pictures for like 2 out of the 3 hours. We were getting shown pictures from these books, and we looked around. There was a lot of guided tours, and all these tour guides had these freaking books, and they're showing you like these different things, and they're asking you questions and brain teasers, and it was interactive and fun and cool. But again, by the time you get in to any part of Vatican City, because there's obviously various buildings and structures and churches you can go into, but you get into all these different rooms, and there's like a plethora of tour guides. Everyone's holding up like these poles to distinguish which tour guide is which, and you're trying to walk through to get through these things, and it kind of feels like Times Square during the ball drop, which I've been to. You want to go see it because you think it's going to be monumental and it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. You're like, oh, New York City, Times Square, the ball drop. But then you get there and you're like, there's way too many people here to enjoy it, and there's no place to pee. That's what it felt like at Vatican City. And I'm not discrediting the history of the entire city. I mean, because that thing, like, Vatican City runs Rome, and it's beautiful. But by the time we got done with the tour, we went to the Sistine Chapel. It didn't help that our baby decided to freak out during that time. She was fine for 2 hours and 55 minutes. But the last 5 minutes, we literally walked into this quiet Sistine Chapel. Everyone keep your voice down. It's a place of worship and respect. And my baby freaking lost her mind. I think because there was hundreds of people there and she was just hungry. So I tossed a banana in her face and she was completely fine, but that was a stressful couple minutes. But the tour was only there for 5 minutes and then we had to leave. And I'm like, oh, man, that's kind of the only thing I wanted to see. Like, I would prefer to stay there for 2.5 hours because it is truly breathtaking. It's beautiful. And I would show you some stuff here, but they don't allow you to do any photos or videos. I just don't know if it's worth the time and energy. Because again, I just go back to the entire guided tour. You start like a mile away from the Vatican because you can't set up a tour right in front. And then you get with the tour guide and you walk with a large group to the Vatican. You got to wait in line still. You show your ticket 5 times. They check your bags. It's like a whole process, like going to a Taylor Swift concert. It's a nightmare. And then by the time you get in, it's like you're looking around and you want to take pictures and you want to hang out and, read the history of each sculpture. But you can't because everyone's pushing you along because there's so many people. So I don't know. It was kind of stressful. Same thing with the Colosseum, but with the Colosseum, we paid a little bit extra for a personal guided tour. So there was only 15 people in our group. I wish there was something like that for the Vatican because I think we would have enjoyed it more. But either way, I mean, no regrets. It was definitely, well worth the money and it was fantastic. But if you only had 5 days in Rome, I wouldn't spend a day there. Just my personal opinion. But the food, okay? Let's talk about the food. Is the food as good as people say? The food to me is more of an art than the whole city. And the whole city's beautiful. But the food that we experienced, this is not an exaggeration. The food we experienced in Italy, there was not one place. We specifically went down like alleys and streets that locals told us to go down, and no one spoke English, and like run down looking places on the outside, but then you walk in and it's like a beautiful cavern, and there's tons of history and like these little hidden gems we went in, and you're like, how good could this be? This is gross. It was some of the best food I've had in my life. Again, no exaggeration. It was so good. There was not a meal that we had that was not good. So maybe if we went to the touristy spots, the food wouldn't be as good, which I highly recommend that you go to the non-touristy spots. An easy trigger is like of where not to go would be if anybody has been to like Miami or South Beach, you always have like people trying to like bring you in. Like they're outside. It's always like a 25-year-old guy that doesn't speak English. He's like, hey, come in, sit down, here. Those places are not good. Another red flag would be if they have food displayed on the outside of the restaurant, like wax food or menu is in English. Big red flag. Like, you'll figure it out. To me, the food was so good. Every single bite, it felt like I died and saw Julius Caesar. Like, it was that good. I feel like that's just part of the Italian culture, right? Because Italians just respect the history, I think, of their city or their country or their region. Also their food. If they mess that up, that's like most of their reputation, right? So I think they take a lot of pride in food, and it's obvious, not just in the food, but in the service. I mean, they treat you really good versus in America, they're trying to like shuffle you out, right? It's a numbers game, get you in, get you out, that type of thing. There were some places that we spent an hour and a half, 2 hours in, and they weren't rude. They would offer us more espresso. They would offer us dessert. I mean, they wanted you to stay because I think they value the restaurant so much, or the cafe, wherever you're at, and they want you to stay there, have a great time, because they know if they treat you really, really good, you're going to keep coming back. Now, speaking of espresso, notice I said espresso, not espresso, in case you need to know. The coffee there is incredible. You could order like a cafe americano, which is regular coffee, what we know as coffee, but they only drink espresso. They'll have a cappuccino in the morning sometimes, but espresso is like their thing, where espresso is like just a shot of espresso and they sip it. They don't shoot it like we do, or they don't mix it into, milk and charge $7 for it. They take their time, and you sit down and you're having a conversation with your friend, or, even just the person that made you the coffee. And you just enjoy. You don't just shoot it and get right back to work. And let me tell you, every time I took a couple of sips of that espresso, it's like rocket fuel. I mean, those Italians do not mess around with their caffeine. It is legit. In fact, after a couple sips of espresso, I was speaking Italian somehow. It was fascinating. Okay, now next, the people of Rome. I don't know if this is like this in other parts of Italy. I mean, we only went to Amalfi Coast and Salerno, which is a little bit south of Amalfi Coast, but in Rome in particular, I could speak a lot to, because we were there for almost 2 weeks, but every single person was super friendly. The recommendations we had, a lot of it came from locals that were just like, hanging out away from tourist area, and we're just like, hey, how good is that place? Oh, it's good. Check it out. But from what I hear, everyone in Italy is just super friendly. Like the waiters, the managers, they would come up, they ask how you doing, do you want anything else? Most of the time they would just hover, like not in a weird way, but you could see them, like 10 feet away just waiting for you if you need anything. Versus like in America, I feel like a lot of waiters would be like in the back on their phone. They're messing around with the chefs. These people, if you look in the kitchen, because most of the time you can see what's in the kitchen, that's all they do. Is if they show up to work, they're working. They're only focused on giving you the best service and making sure that you have the best time. Very interesting culture in the best way possible, because it's just not something that I've been used to over the years. It's amazing. And you gotta love how they communicate, right? Like they're passionate. Of course, I'm part Italian, so the hand gesturing to me, I'm very used to. But just the waiters, I mean, it's quite a performance. I must say, like, I feel like every restaurant we went to, it was like the Italian National Theater. It was supposed to, like, I don't know if I was supposed to, like, say thank you and tip them, or if I was supposed to applaud, bravo, because it was just like, it was a performance every time, and they weren't trying to do it. It's just how they are. They were just expressive and just very polite and friendly. Now, of course, there are some cons. Italy's not perfect. No country is perfect. There's not a lot of cons, but there are some cons. I'm not going to speak to like the healthcare portion of it, but just from what we witnessed, the traffic, bro. Similar to in other countries like Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, maybe other places that you've been to, the traffic is bad. I mean, every driver is training for Formula One. It is pretty gnarly. There was one incident in particular where we were in the back of the cab and a motorcycle hopped out in front of the cab we were in, and the cab driver had to slam on his brakes, and we almost hit the motorcyclist. And what was so funny is they just shout a couple things in Italian, like and then they just drive off. Like there's no other interaction that takes place. They just curse each other and leave. So that was kind of weird and terrifying. And the buses, the public transportation on the major streets, the buses in particular are a nightmare. They were like packed in there like sardines. I've never seen anything like it in my life. I mean, it's worse than the subway in New York. It is so crazy that is even legal. So we did not take the bus. We didn't need to. We just did a cab or walked. But we did do public transportation. Now, this isn't necessarily a con, because I thought it was pretty unbelievable, is their speed trains. So like we took the train from Rome and you pass Naples and you go to Salerno, and then we stayed in Salerno for a couple of days, and then we did Amalfi Coast because we took a ferry to Amalfi Coast. But we took the speed train. It took like, I don't know, 2 hours, 3 hours. We paid a little bit extra for first class, and let me tell you, which was cheap, by the way. It was amazing. We had this like pesto mozzarella sandwich with like tomatoes and olive oil. And that was like a snack on the train. And it was amazing. So if you ever get a chance to use that train, we took the Italia. I definitely recommend that. Overall, if I had to sum up this video into like one sentence, Italy is magical. I mean, between the sights, the food, and the coma-inducing meals, it's all good vibes, man. It was just unbelievable. And when I say coma-inducing, I don't mean like you feel here in America. I mean coma-inducing, like I ate an entire pizza and I was fine. Like I was still walking around having fun. But then, of course, you're exhausted by the end of the day because you're probably hopped up on adrenaline and you had all this good food and you did a lot of walking. But I mean, overall, what an adventure. The flight there obviously was brutal, but you forget about it real quick when you land because there's so many cool things to do. The people that I've talked to that have spent time in Rome, sometimes they'll say like, oh yeah, we spent, 2 days in Rome, 2 days in Florence, 2 days here too. How? We spent 9 days in Rome and I feel like I could have spent another month there. Like, I don't know how people spend a couple days. So if I'm you, if you plan to go to Italy, Rome specifically, because there's so much to do, spend a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks in Rome if you want. And you could venture off and do little things here and there, but always end up back at Rome because there's so many great things to do. And really the only thing you have to do is save up a little bit of money. It's not that expensive. The flight's expensive, sure, but when we went there, we didn't spend more than $50 on a meal between the three of us. And our daughter was eating just like us. Pizza, pasta, of course we had some vino while we were there. It was just overall a very affordable vacation versus some other parts of the US that we've actually been to. So you just work on your hand gestures a little bit, learn a couple things like buongiorno, ciao, salve. That's all you gotta do. Blend in a little bit with the crowd, man, and you're gonna have a blast. Anyway, if you've been to Italy, leave a comment below. Let me know what you guys think. I'd love to know your experience, what parts of Italy you went to, and we plan to go back to Italy a lot more because there's a lot more to experience. So share this video with someone who wants to take a Roman holiday because it's a good one. All right, well, I'll catch you all on the next one. Ciao.